Hello and welcome back to the Entertainment Vortex. Today we were at Brendan Theaters watching Rampage, sadly. Going into this movie, I was not too excited, I'm going to be honest with you. I saw the trailers, and the first thing I thought was, this is a really weird IP to make a movie out of. There are amazing IPs still out there that you can make movies out of, and you chose Rampage, the video game. Even as a gamer, that seems like a bad idea. But tried to go in with an open mind. It looked like it was going to be cheesy. It was cheesy. It looked like it was going to be cringeworthy. It was cringeworthy. My expectations were pretty much met from what I thought this movie was going to be. I went in with really low expectations, hoping that I would be surprised. I was not. I feel this movie was made for a very specific audience. If you are a young child between the ages of 8 and 12, you will adore this movie. Especially if you are one that plays with monster toys and stuff like that, because that's basically what this movie is.
So as Nick stated before, going into this movie, super low expectations. The trailer did not look great. It looked like one of those things where a lot of the funny stuff ends up in the trailer. This is going to be that case. All of the scenes of noteworthiness are in that trailer. It was kind of a slim pickings type of thing. It basically felt like they just took the trailer and it was just like, the trailer was the movie and they added deleted scenes on to make it a little bit longer. Everything just felt drawn out, action for the sake of action, not really much of a story to talk about. One of my biggest complaints about this movie, it felt like everything was derivative. 80 to 90% of this film was stuff that had been done in other movies but done better. You see it in the trailer, you have a lot of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson doing this guy, trying to fend people off, and that's straight out of Jurassic World. That's not something that's novel or new, it's been done before, and that's pretty much just what I can say about this movie. Everything has been done before, and in better and more interesting ways.
The story is super thin. It doesn't even work within their own rule set, but you know, I didn't really expect it to be realistic going in. I didn't think that it was going to 100% work within their own rule set. That doesn't really bother me that much. If the movie would have flowed well, if the dialogue wasn't cringeworthy, if they weren't cussing every 30 seconds in what's basically a movie made for kids, I think it would have been okay. But some of the humor, I think, went a little too far. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm good for the craziest, darkest humor you can do, but when you have a movie that's obviously going to pull in a younger audience, you have a responsibility to not go too far. And man, they cuss a lot in this movie. I was shocked. The jokes are sexual in nature, and it just really surprised me. So if you're a parent watching this review and you're thinking about taking your child, just make sure you're okay with that. Make sure that you're okay with a lot of cussing, a lot of foul language. Make sure you're okay with some sexual jokes and things like that.
This is one of those movies that has a razor thin plot to it, and then you get drawn away from things like really, really bad in-movie science that doesn't make sense or doesn't check out in any way, shape, or form. Those are the kind of things that will instantly turn me off of a movie. Even if I'm starting to enjoy it, that sort of a thing, if the science is super bad and they break their own rules a lot, it's terrible movie going. It's something that makes you want to get up and leave the theater. If I weren't reviewing this, I would have considered it. I've never done that before. I've obviously considered it before, but I've never actually gotten up out of the theater. If we hadn't been reviewing it today, I would have considered doing it. For those who want to actually go see this movie, and I don't want to spoil anything for you, there's a particular Easter egg in this movie that really just threw me off. It happens early on. It was something that I noticed and I was like, that's dumb. You're gonna see it and you're gonna roll your eyes. It's not something that's cool, like especially after watching a movie like Ready Player One a couple of weeks ago, where they take the concept of an Easter egg and they make it into this big thing, and every other thing is just super cool and interesting to see, and they do it the right way. This is the exact opposite of that. Couldn't be further from something novel and interesting to see on a screen. It was just stupid. The acting performances, save for Dwayne Johnson and Jeffrey Dean Morgan, were just abysmal. There wasn't any flavor to any of the characters. They didn't have anything new or interesting to bring to the plot. Those two characters in particular were solid. You get pretty much the same thing you get anytime you put The Rock in a movie with him, which I'm down for that. I love seeing him in movies. He was great in Jumanji. He's been great in the Fast franchise. He has a specific type of humor about him that just makes a lot lot of sense for that kind of a guy. That played off really well with that kind of like snarky, like backhanded kind of conversation that you get from a Jeffrey Dean Morgan type character. Their banter was great. I don't even watch wrestling at this point in my life, and if the two of them were to create some kind of a wrestling duo and both and just join WWE or whatever, I would pay to see that. Their banter was the lone lighthouse in this movie as compared to everything else, which I just felt was like subpar or even further than that below.
There is actually a good part of this movie. The banter between The Rock and Jeffrey Dean Morgan. Absolutely hilarious. Every time the two of them were talking, I just wanted to forget the rest of the movie, drop the plot, and just have the two of them go at each other. Because I would have watched that for 2 hours more than the rest of this movie. That was very entertaining, and I hope that something good to come out of this movie is them taking the two of them and putting them in another movie with a better script, because they work really well together. Obviously, we all know The Rock from his wrestling days, and we know that he can talk the talk. He is fast-talking, he's witty, he's got that sarcastic edge to him, and he has a presence. Well, Jeffrey Dean Morgan, if you've watched The Walking Dead and you've seen anything as him as Negan, you know he can do the exact same thing. So putting the two together was pretty awesome. Sadly, every other character in the movie was one-dimensional. The bad guys just seemed horrible. They were supposed to be this duo, and they just seemed one-dimensional and they were just boring. Not to mention the fact that you have, I guess you would call it the heroine, the one that's with The Rock during a majority of the movie. I don't know if it was supposed to be a love interest or what it was supposed to be, but super bad. The chemistry between them was broken. It didn't work at all. It could have been swapped out for anybody else, and it would have worked.
The music wasn't really present. They had some kind of a score that you really couldn't hear over any of the other stuff. They had a song they played during the credits that was just a complete bastardization of a song by Smashing Pumpkins, and it was really bad. I don't know where this new thing of taking an existing property and then turning it into like this weird, almost like pseudo-electronic thing is coming from. Sometimes they do an okay job. This one was really bad. I was like, ooh, cringy.
I just feel that this movie could have been better than what it was. There's nothing wrong with watching an action movie and just going for brainless fun. Nothing wrong with that at all. I mean, I just gave Pacific Rim a positive score a couple weeks ago, and that is an example of that. The story is not super deep, it's just brainless fun and an excuse to see robots and monsters duke it out. And you know what? That's fun every once in a while, but the script has to be worth it. At least put a little bit of effort in. I don't feel like I cared about any of these characters. I didn't care about what was happening. I mean, I cared a little bit about the gorilla, but that's pretty bad if I care more about the gorilla than the characters in the other characters in the movie. It just was poorly done.
It's 2018. Middling effects are okay when it comes to computer-generated things, but there are some things in here that were like late 90s, early 2000s bad. It wasn't a whole lot of scenes, but they were noticeable and they stuck out every time they happened. It was just rough. So rough. There were some scenes where they were showing like the animals and stuff moving through the forest and it just looked bad. So bad. And then them parachuting down, some of those were computer generated and their faces looked f***ed up. No, they were bad.
It looked okay. The special effects, a couple scenes were kind of but a majority of the special effects were really good. I mean, you get to see that throwing through buildings and crazy high action. It's just action for the sake of action isn't fun if there isn't any emotion behind it. I really didn't feel there was much emotion behind this. And it just broke immersion too many times. Bad lines, bad one-liners, bad acting. Bad.
Those of you who are fight fans out there, you'll be interested to know that local boy from Sacramento, Uriah Faber, is in this film. He has a single line. He's not very great in it, but he is there in it. Was something cool to see. It caught me kind of off guard. I was like, oh, that's Uriah Faber. I've seen him fight before. That's cool.
If you're not under the age of 15, it's bad. So, with that being said, I'm going to give this movie a 4 out of 10. And every one of those 4 points is for Rock and Jeffrey Dean Morgan acting together, because that really was the strength of the movie.
As far as this movie is concerned, I'm going to give it a 2 out of 10. I didn't know if I was going to be able to give a movie that kind of score, because even some really bad movies, I still consider them to be something that I was okay watching. This was the worst movie I've seen since I started doing the reviews for this channel.
If you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. We do a minimum of 4 videos a week, including movie reviews, Funko Pop news, and a bunch of gaming content. If you're interested in getting one of our t-shirts, the link is down in the description. And as always, We hope you'll follow us into the Vortex. We'll see you next time.